So, welcome everyone for our Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about teenagers. I want to talk about how the mobile hygiene, cell phone hygiene, the social media hygiene. That's what I want to talk about, because I've been seeing more and more and more children, teenagers especially, who are more anxious or depressed on a regular basis. Do you know that most kids really don't need a cell phone until they're much older? But with peer pressure, most parents are actually giving the cell phone to their children younger and younger, and it's actually making children more depressed and anxious younger and younger because of all the different things that comes with it. One, the addiction that comes with it, the dopamine that's actually being released every single time that they are on the cell phone, that actually makes them difficult to engage in other ways. And dopamine is actually a pleasure chemical that's released for anything, including drugs. So it becomes more of a drug addiction. And that's the reason why when we actually tell them, well, give me your phone back, kids actually have such a hard time. They have temper tantrums over it, and they cannot actually stay away from it because of the dopamine release. And what we are essentially doing is we are setting our children up for failure in many ways, or addiction in many ways, because we are essentially telling them that this is the only way to find any kind of happiness. But joy or happiness is produced by oxytocin, which is a different chemical than dopamine. So it's extremely important that even before giving the phones, or first of all, we need to ask whether they do need the phone, and if they do need the phone, at what age we need to actually give it to them, because their brain is still developing and their brain isn't fully developed. And even adults find it hard to actually fight cell phone addiction and social media addiction. So it is understandable that when the brain is still developing, it'll be even harder for them to actually fight it. And so it's our job as parents to be able to help them deal with these things better. So there needs to be some kind of ground rules. And parents, giving phones because of peer pressure from other parents who give phones to their children younger and younger. We as parents are very strong. We can actually do better than that. We can actually fight the peer pressure. And the thing is that if everybody feels that the other parent is actually giving, and the other parent is feeling that another parent is giving, I think we are all giving in more because of this, rather than anybody really wanting to give it to them. So what if all of us stood united and say we won't give our children phones until they are in high school? They truly don't need it, and they are fine, they will be fine. If anything, they will actually thrive, not just be fine. And if more parents stood together and said they are not going to give their children phones until they are in high school minimum, then that means that we're all going to stay united, and the kids won't feel left out as well. And another aspect of it is that even when they go to high school, there needs to be a cell phone hygiene. We talk about all kinds of hygiene. Cell phone hygiene is something that we need to all develop. And parents need to develop as well. Like, we need to put our phones away for a certain period of time. And there are these timer lock boxes that you can actually get. And everybody can put their phones in there and let it be there for maybe 2-3 hours every evening when we come back, so that we can engage in other kinds of conversations, because kids are already on screens all the time, and all of us are actually. I'm on a screen right now, right? And so we're all on screens all the time anyways. Even when they come home, they're still doing homework on their computer. So it's not like they're not on their screens. We just don't need to add another screen in which they can do, more social media and all of those kinds of things. So, for 2 to 3 hours, put it in there. If it is too hard to, stop that, need to pick up the phone and look at it, right? So putting it in that would be extremely helpful. And the same thing with, nighttime as well. Many kids are actually suffering from depression and anxiety because they are not really getting good night's sleep. And sleep is extremely essential for our brain and for our body to reset in so many different ways. So if we are not getting enough sleep, how we will be, the same thing is true for our children as well. It's not like teenagers have some kind of superhuman ability that they can actually go on for days without sleeping properly. Also, another thing that I've noticed is that most teenagers are actually on their phones more often when they come home and they're talking with their friends and so on and so forth. So they don't start their homework until much later. And when they start their homework later, they actually finish their homework later. And it's also a bragging right for most teenagers that they are up late at night. They tell that to other friends, and it's almost like, now they all have to compete and see who can actually stay up longer. But they don't really understand the effects of it. They are just kind of reacting to everything that comes. Oh, I feel this way, I do this. Oh, I get this chemical in my body, I want this, and so on and so forth. But now that we actually have more and more and more research on this, more and more information on this, and more things that we are seeing, we need to change this. One of the things that I do is I actually turn off the internet after 10 p.m., which means that if my teenager wants to be on the computer doing homework, she only has until 10 o'clock. She cannot actually be on it later than that. And her cell phone as well as TV, nothing will really work after 10 p.m., which means that you're welcome to be awake, but it's up to you what you want to do with it. If you want to read a book, great. There's nothing that's going to be connected to the internet that will actually keep you engaged. And also taking their phones away by 10 p.m. also helps, because then they're not texting with their friends at that time, so that we can actually help other children also sleep on time and wake up on time. Because I'm seeing so many kids with dark circles under their eyes already. Obviously it's not just about anxiety and depression. If you don't have enough sleep, if they don't have enough sleep, their immune system will be depressed. They'll get sick more often, or they'll have allergies more often. We even see a lot of autoimmune conditions in young people nowadays, and their bodies are not any different than our bodies. What we need is what they need, whether it is food, whether it is rest, whether it is being on a phone, whether it is social media. It doesn't matter what it is. They are not that different. They're just smaller. That doesn't mean that they actually have different needs than us. So we as parents need to start putting these kinds of things in place so that we can actually see less depression, less anxiety among children, because they'll actually engage with parents more, engage with siblings more when they are at home, and they are not really talking to people that they don't even know. They are not talking to people that could be actually posing as somebody else and creating danger in their own lives. I mean, there's so much to it, but the minimum that we can do for their health is to actually limit their screen time on their phones, and also let them go to sleep early. I hope this is something that all of us can actually put into practice, so that our children can be healthier in their body and their mind. I know we pay attention so much to maybe what they eat. And also, one of the other things that I also want to mention here is a lot of times parents say, well, he's a teenager or she's a teenager, which means they eat poorly. And this is again something that we need to change. Why is it that just because they are teenagers, they have to eat poorly? Is it because, they actually have some superhuman abilities to be able to digest and absorb all of the nutrients from junk food? They don't. And just because they are young does not mean that they'll be healthy. We see that they are not. We see more and more kids as patients, because what we think that kids can eat anything is actually extremely dangerous, and it's affecting their health. It's causing all kinds of chronic diseases in them. So we have to understand that kids cannot eat anything. They cannot do anything. They have to actually have same kind of structure as we do. This is not really something that will hurt them. This will actually help them so much. So help your children stay healthy, and help your children understand these kinds of things, that anything that comes new comes with certain kinds of rules and responsibilities, and it is our job to do that. And it will help them in the long term as well, because their brains will actually know how to manage dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and they'll actually understand the difference between joy and pleasure. And this is true for adults as well. So, and another thing is that we as adults should also emulate that, in the sense that we need to first put those things in practice. We need to do that in order for us to be asking our children to do that as well, so that they actually do what we do rather than what we say, right? So let me know in the comments as to what are the practices that you do with your teenagers that helps, because we're all here to learn from each other, right? So maybe you actually have some amazing ways of dealing with the biggest problem that we have for our generation as parents. Maybe you can actually give other people tips. Maybe you can give me tips as well. And there is so much to learn, so we can all learn together. We can all share with each other. So let me know what are the things that you're doing. Let everyone else know what are the other things that you're doing, and where is it that you actually find as a challenge as well, because maybe somebody else has an idea that can help you. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.